Okay guys, here we go. So far in the Scuba Regulator service series, I have shown you several things, but most recently I've shown you how to measure the intermediate pressure. I showed you how to build a little inexpensive gauge. Instead of paying $150 for an expensive one, you can build one for $20, and how to measure intermediate pressure. I also have shown you on this next series, I showed you how to adjust the intermediate pressure. That's right. If you have a diaphragm type, you can adjust it externally quite easily. And if you have a piston type, you can't adjust it because it's always set. Good or bad. I'm not saying it's good or bad. You guys that love diaphragm regs, it's just that piston regs don't need adjustment. They're always adjusted. Anyway, it's another story. And so now what we need to do is show you how to adjust the breathing resistance in the second stage. You see, so here we have a regulator setup, and it's turned on. So it's not turned on. So you can see that we have, what do we have here? Well, it's slowly going up. This is a very slow pressure gauge, so this will slowly go up to almost 2,000 psi. This is the SPG, a high pressure gauge. It's slowly climbing 1,015. Why is it so slow? You all should know this from Tech Tips, because of the tiny, tiny orifices they have in all high pressure fittings. And the hose, and this, it goes up very slowly. Air passes through very slowly. So if something breaks, air doesn't come rushing out and cause a problem. But anyway, there we go. We're up to almost 2,000 psi. And I've also gone ahead and put my inexpensive, my $20 intermediate pressure gauge checker onto the LP hose, and it shows that this reg is adjusted to 150 psi, which is perfect. So we know now that the first stage is getting air at 2,000 and is delivering air into the low pressure hoses, which go to the second stages and so on at 150 psi. That's perfect. Okay, now how do we make sure that the second stage is breathing as easily as possible? How do we do that? Well, that's actually pretty simple too. Check and make sure it's working. Yeah. Yep, it is working. Good. Now, what you need to do is turn off the air and purge the air out of here. Get rid of all the air. And then what you need to do is you need to detach the hose from the second stage. Now be careful when you do this, okay? These are going to be 5/8 or 11/16 nuts on here, and you need to remove the hose. When you do that, be very, very careful that you're only turning the nut on the end of the hose, not the nut that's on the regulator body. Yes, there's usually two nuts. Only the outside one, the hose one, should turn and come off. Don't turn the one that's against the body, or the body can start to disassemble. You don't want that. So you might need 2 wrenches, maybe. Anyway, take the hose off. Simple, okay? Now what? I don't know, Kevin. Is there any chance that you can go way down in that hole? If I hold it just like that, can you get down there? Can you see that there's a white plastic part down in there? And can you see that there's a slot in that white plastic part, like a screwdriver slot?
Yep.
That's what you're going to adjust. It is, in fact, a screwdriver type slot. You can use a screwdriver in it if you want to, but there's other ways to do it. All right, here we go. When you put a screwdriver or the proper tool onto this fitting, push it in, and you turn that white plastic. That's actually called the seat. That's the hard seat. There's 2 seats, hard and soft. That's called the seat. And when you turn that seat, you increase or decrease your breathing resistance. Okay? If you turn the seat counterclockwise, if it's screwing out, it gets easier to breathe. If you turn it out too far, it actually free flows. That's really easy to breathe. You can't get any easier to breathe than free flowing, right? As you start to turn it in clockwise, screwing it in, it gets harder to breathe. You're putting more and more pressure on the soft seat. So it gets harder and harder for the diaphragm you suck on it to open it. Obviously, you want to have it at exactly the right place, right at the right place, where it's almost ready to free flow, but not quite. That's the easiest place. How do you do that? Well, there's a couple of ways. There's the easy way and there's the hard way. The hard way is this. Yeah, a screwdriver. So you would take a screwdriver and put the screwdriver into that slot. It needs to be the right size screwdriver that'll fit into the tube and into the slot. Put it in there, and I got it. And then, what's next? Push the purge button down and unscrew that white plastic hard seat a little bit. Okay, now let's put the hose on and see what happens. Uh-oh, free flow. Too easy. We don't want it that easy. So let's turn it in. Put the hose back on. You see why I say this is the hard way? That's right. Every time you adjust it, you have to put the hose back on. Oh, still too easy. Take the hose off, screwdriver, reach back in, Peirce button down. Turn it a bit more. Let's just see. Are we getting closer? Let's see if we can make it a little bit. Ah, no free flow. So is that as easy as possible? Well, we don't really know. What we should do is take it out a little wee bit. So you see the process? You turn it out until there free flows, you turn it in until it stops, and back and forth until you get it right on the edge. And it can be done with a screwdriver. If that's what you have, that's what you have. It'll work. And when you're all done, snug it back up. Let me stop for 1 minute. I've told you to push the Peirce button in each time. Why? That seat that you're turning, the hard seat, has got a sharp, hard edge on it. The soft seat is a very thin piece of neoprene that sits on that hard seat. So it's like a hard tube and a soft piece of neoprene. If you turn that hard tube with the screwdriver, while the soft seat is pushing against it, you'll cut it. You don't want that. So what you do, each time you want to adjust the hard seat, you push the Peirce button in. When you push the Peirce button in, it pulls it away a little bit. Adjust it, let it go back, try it. Okay? Push the Peirce button in, adjust it, put it back on. Okay? Simple enough. So, what's the easy way? That'll work. That will work. What's the easy way? Well, the easiest way is to spend $200, get yourself one of these. Isn't this slick? And you see, this device is pretty slick. First of all, it has a fitting for the hose. We can put the hose right on there right now. Kevin, watch this. Put the hose right on there, just like that. Maybe we'll get that hose to go on there. And then it has a gauge. This is an intermediate pressure gauge. Right. And then it has an adjustment knob right here. And you see this adjustment knob, it moves in and out. You see that, Kevin? And you see what's on the end? Exactly. It's just like a screwdriver, isn't it? Guess what? So what you do now is you put that onto the regulator second stage. Okay? This turns, but if you push it in, that screwdriver tip engages with the slot, and now I can turn the slot. Watch. Intermediate pressure. Good. You ready? I'm going to turn it counterclockwise coming out to make it easier. Oh, free flow. Turn it back in a little bit, make it harder. Out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in. Right there. Perfect. Right on the edge. Not free flowing, but not hard. Simple. Shut the air off. Purge. Take the hose off. Pull this out so you don't change the adjustment. Take this off and put it back together. Yeah, this is what service people. Because service people aren't going to take the time for 15, 20 minutes or longer to, with a screwdriver, hose off and back and forth. So they spend the money and buy one of these. I don't suggest you do that. There are other ways to do it. You can get a less expensive model like this. Half the price, doesn't have the fancy gauge on it, does exactly the same job. See the screwdriver end on it. These are not expensive to buy. You get them online. Scuba Tools is a good company. You can buy them like this. They're pretty inexpensive. Does the same job. You don't need to have an intermediate pressure gauge, do you? Because you made one, remember? You don't need to have two of them. Or if you want, you can even get this style. This is even less expensive. This neat little device is a screwdriver that goes onto the regulator like so. Screws into place. The hose goes on this end like so, and now you can adjust it. What's the difference between these different devices? Well, the big fancy one is nice. It's smooth, very precise, has a gauge on it. The next one now does exactly the same job without the gauge. This one is a little less sophisticated. For this particular model, you actually have to hold it in against the air pressure. So it's maybe not quite as accurate. But between you and I, it's perfectly fine. Your breathing resistance is not that critical that this small difference will make much of a difference. You won't even notice it. Certainly it's maybe a little easier than using a screwdriver, but it's not necessarily better. So there you have some tips. You understand how it's done mechanically. You may not understand what's happening in here. I may share that with you too. But now you understand mechanically how your regulator breathing resistance is adjusted. Some ways you can do it, and even if you're so inclined, you can do it. I'm not suggesting that, but now you understand how it's done. There we go. I'm going diving. See you soon. Alec, Peirce, Scuba.